Hey everybody, welcome back to another reaction video. Hope you're doing well. My name is Todd. This one is Michelle Jones, which was Zendaya's character in Spider-Man. This was requested by a Patreon subscriber. If you too would like to join the Patreon, link it down below in the description. We'll get you there. Throw a like on the video if you like it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Hit that notification bell. That way you know when videos post immediately, and you can come check them out, and let's go. Now, in all honesty, I have not seen the most recent Spider-Man. Which one is it? Far From Home? No. Something Home. Welcome Home? I can't remember what it is. I've seen the rest, though.
What's the quintessential MJ scene? It's of course, face it Tiger, you just hit the fucking jackpot, motherfucker, which is often remembered because of how beautifully she's drawn after several issues of hiding her face. However, there's also an additional factor that contributed to the build-up, and that's how Aunt May kept describing her. No but about it, Peter Parker. It's time you began to seriously think about your future. You'll want a girl who'll make a good housewife. Someone like Mrs. Watson's niece. Furthermore, up to this point, all the women in Peter's life were pretty similarly characterized. Betty Brant was mainly interested in getting married and would get heartbroken when she couldn't cook him food. Liz Allen became attracted to Peter Parker due to his bravery, and even minor female characters would have the hearts for Peter because of his conventional maturity / husband material, like fucking Johnny Storm's girlfriend.
And they also look very stereotypical to that time frame. So I'm looking at how she's drawn, and it's very different. It's almost like modern times.
Therefore, there were no real reasons to believe MJ would deviate, but she did. She was a fucking badass party girl who's rebellious, independent, career-driven, and was equally witty, charming, and happy-go-lucky as Peter was, because MJ was created as a challenge for Gwen, who Stan had planned to be Peter Parker's true love. Thus, by appearing like a better fit superficially, Peter would grow to appreciate Gwen on a deeper level. Furthermore, during the Lee Romita era, the comics got way more politically explicit in terms of what type of social problems and people are represented. You got student protests, racism, drugs, and white supremacy. Therefore, MJ became a subtle, regular symbol of this young, new world. I'm nobody's girl but my own, and that's the way I like it. See you around, Curly. At the heart of the original MJ was someone that rejected your social assumptions and existed in a very specific interstitial space between the fiction, where she's a character with an arc, and our world, as a symbol of subversion that represented a new type of youth that was at odds with broader traditions in society. To the extent that during Spidey's original run, we often actually heard people's reaction to MJ more than actually her. What's fucking weird about Sam Raimi's MJ is that she's actually closer in tune to Stan Lee's original Betty Brant. Instead of being someone who naturally grows into Peter Parker's true love, she's his first love. Instead of being independent, she's very needy of her men, and the initial breakup is literally because Peter Parker picked Spidey over her. Although the comic was a bit more tragic because Peter Parker kept triggering Betty's PTSD, whereas Raimi's MJ was sort of just fine, I guess, after being thrown off a bridge. Very strange. As a result, all of the surface level traits that Kirsten Dunst really beautifully captured well, I thought. The beautiful redhead popular girl with dreams of becoming an actress, although it randomly changed to sing for no reason by 3, became more or less decorations for a character that didn't really capture the deeper spirit.
All I remember from Spider-Man 3 is it was weird. That's all I remember. I can't even remember the plot of any of these Spider-Man movies. All I know is that meme sticks in my head where he's like dancing down the street. It's like Dark Peter.
Of the source material. So to move forward with a fresh adaptation / reinterpretation is to skip the surface and go straight to the other side. Michelle Jones Watson is technically an original character with an original name, personality, and story, but at the same time, she's effectively a reapplication of Mary Jane's original meaning, where whatever your elderly aunt who's very conservative thinks is right for you, MJ is the opposite. So in a generation where Zoomers drink less than Boomers, the premise of making MJ a party girl wouldn't really make her a social rebel anymore, but going for the quiet aunt.
What's wild is my parents' generation, the silent generation, they would drink. My mom tells me these stories all the time. They would drink from like 5 to like 8, and then they'd eventually get around to dinner. Like it was like a happy hour times 3 hours, and then they'd eventually get around to dinner with the kids. But it was typically a drink fest, you know, hosting other families or other parents, I guess. And the kids just went off and did their own thing for hours.
Musty girl who sits far away from everyone else doodling, doesn't wear makeup, eats toast at parties, and dresses like a dude. You know what? That's actually someone who rejects your assumptions.
Liking comic books is popular, environmental awareness, being tolerant. If I was just born 10 years later, I would have been the coolest person ever. I know. It's bullshit.
You see, as I mentioned before, there's
I just watched 21 Jump Street not that long ago. Still funny.
two types of nostalgic texts. Reconstructive, where the media presents an old idea as a modern-day truth, and deconstructive, which leans towards critiquing and assessing old ideas with modern questions that weren't addressed before. Michelle Jones is a really sneaky intersection of both, where she deconstructs in order to reconstruct, because she preserves through her differences, as the motives behind the changes are so in tune and very specifically related to the vibes that she originated from.
Excuse me, can we go already? Because I was hoping to get in some light protesting in front of one of the embassies before dinner.
The youthful contrarian vibes, and it's all used effortlessly to aid and form the Home Trilogy's main arc, which is centered on the theme of Peter Parker forfeiting the future he deserves in order to develop himself more truly. His first love is not unlike Raimi's Peter Parker, the unreachable popular girl, Liz Allen. But in contrast, he actually grows out of it because, just like his aspirations to be like Iron Man, it's a fantasy of his youth.
I'm sorry. You don't deserve this.
Tony and Liz are illusory in how they give him a future he thinks he wants, but doesn't extend who he truly is. A kid whose social worth doesn't come from popularity or recognition, but his anonymity as a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. An answer to people like Toombs, and by the end of the story, a literal nobody.
It's the beauty of the character.
MJ is the thread that connects with these transformations. She's the outcast, someone who checks Peter Parker out even when he himself hadn't noticed her, or the value of his own personal world. However, as her self-esteem improves by involving herself in his world, she finds a community. She finds herself, like he does.
My friends call me MJ.
I thought you didn't have any friends.
I didn't.
Michelle Jones shows us that Peter's true self was always at home. He just had to stop looking away, which happens when he develops a crush on her. However, it's out of a sense of safety and assumption of his own weaknesses. A failure of his eyes, which directly parallels her arc. Michelle is afraid of opening up after being alone for so long, so she denies her intention. But it's in their similar failures that they push and develop.
That scene right there is amazing. Truly amazing. I love that scene.
Each other.
Why else would I be watching it?
MJ's lie pops Peter's fear of change, and his heartbreak is what leads her to stop retreating and admit her true feelings.
I don't really have much luck when it comes to getting close to people. So I lied.
Through each other, they grow up and out of their childish eyes, to the extent that they eventually share a simple mantra. If you expect disappointment, then you can never really be disappointed. The polar opposite of Peter Parker's original disposition.
You know, all this is kind of your
Hope for the best, expect the worst.
mess. I know a couple
As
of
Mel
magic
Brooks
words
put it.
myself, starting with the word please.
When Peter Parker makes his multiversal mistake, MJ defends him from Doctor Strange's constant rudeness and condescension. Her and Ned's undying loyalty is what finds the other Spider-Man, and in the end, she wants Peter Parker to come back to her. She's the shore he'll always return to. He's just too scared right now, but one day, they'll be together again. The core message Michelle Jones and Mary Jane shares as the MJs for their Peter Parkers is how the path we need to walk sometimes aren't the ones set by others, or even seeable sometimes, but are the ones we make ourselves. Now, this is the part of the essay where I get all philosophical and end on a big old speech, so here's two things I want to say. First, these very important words. Pockets on Shrek, rockets on deck, tell me what's next, alien sex. Secondly, I just really want to say I really love MCU Peter Parker and MJ, because by focusing on reapplying as opposed to readapting, they feel so real. And I don't mean real like in the sense that it's gritty and different, but they're just so authentic. As much as I'm the one of 6 people in the entire world who seems to like the Kirsten Dunst.
Tom Holland nailed the awkward Peter Parker so well. You can tell he had some experience in it, and it showed, and it was very relatable.
Romance. It's a very movie relationship and character. Stop me if you heard this before. The popular girl with poor self-esteem falls in love with the nerd, who's the only person that really appreciates her for who she is. It's cute, but there's an unavoidable artifice to it. It's very clearly written by dudes that aren't really in touch with their youth, so it substitutes reality with cliches. However, in contrast, even over here in jolly England, MJ, Ned and Peter, without being boastful, all feel authentic, because the stories they tell just through their subtle details resonate so truthfully. I grew up with people exactly like Michelle. Ned is like totally me, not just because I'm Asian, but I was addicted to Legos, specifically making custom minifigures, and had like a weird, totally unhealthy obsession with making my friends the center of my world. And the way Peter Parker experienced burnout because of his anxiety of what the future meant, everyone achieves a level of authenticity that is just beautiful. Michelle Jones as a symbolic representative of the home trilogy, as Mary Jane did for the old 100-issue run, shows us once again that Spider-Man's greatest achievement as a piece of fiction is how his world doesn't just give us stories to escape to, but are a window to appreciate our own lives and the time we live in, therefore allowing us to understand ourselves.
Excellent video. Wonderful essay. Link down below in the description for the original video. Go throw it some love. Clearly, a lot of work went into it. Honestly, when I think back to those movies, the biggest draw for them was Peter and Michelle. Period. Ned too. Ned was fantastic in all those movies, but mostly Peter and Michelle and their relationship that was blossoming. And hey, Tom Holland and Zendaya, I mean, a lot of people wanted that to happen, so that's not surprising either. That was the one thing that really stuck out, and I said it before, I'll say it again, was the authenticity of Peter being so awkward in a lot of those situations, and it coming off as, like, real. So many times we've seen actors try to pull that off, and it never quite got there. You know what's funny? Somebody else that comes to mind with that awkwardness is Jason Biggs in American Pie. For some reason, I just bought that dude having relations with that apple pie. It was so awkward. So awkward. And that point in the first one where he's like dancing on webcam for Nadia, who's sitting on the bed, and he's like stripping. That was unbelievable amounts of secondhand cringe. So it has been done before, but Tom Holland did an amazing job at it. I'm not a comic book nerd. I've never read comics. The most I ever dove into those was like Dilbert and Garfield in like the newspaper, like the Sunday newspapers. They'd have comics in it. But to kind of hear that backstory and give a little bit more thought into... I didn't know Gwen existed. I thought Michelle Jones was just a recreation of Mary Jane. So that tells you about the level of knowledge of Spider-Man that I'm working with. To kind of hear the other side of it and hear some more context was really nice. I appreciate this video for those of us that don't really know what the hell's going on. We just watch the movies and just kind of unplug. Zendaya played that character very well, and it was interesting to see kind of the warming up to Peter after a while. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments on Michelle Jones and this video specifically. Thanks so much for watching and hanging out. I appreciate it. Link down below in the description for the Patreon. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. I appreciate it. I'll see you on the next one. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.